What's going on, guys? Bienvenidos a FATP, and thank you for watching our inaugural episode. This is an interview with my pana Franco Panizo from SBI Soccer and Miami Total Football. We discussed all things Inter Miami in this episode, including their inaugural season in the midst of a global pandemic, the radical off-season changes, Phil Neville's entrance, as well as addressing the playing squad. Obviously, we've seen a mixed bag in terms of results for Inter Miami 2 weeks in, with the loss in the home opener to Chicharito and the LA Galaxy, as well as a win last time out against the reigning Supporters Shield champions, the Philadelphia Union. Unfortunately, the recording cut short, but Franco and I both agreed that this team would be pushing for the playoffs in the 2021 season. So once again, thank you for watching and enjoy. So, to help preview one of the most recognised and interesting teams and talked about, especially over this side of the pond, we've got my man Franco Panizo from SBI Soccer and also from Miami Total Football Radio, like you say.
Nice.
Yeah.
I like that.
Thank you. So, the guy to go to on all things Inter Miami. So check him out on Twitter and everything like that. So first, Franco, I just want to talk about 2020. So obviously the inaugural season for Inter Miami, and like it couldn't have come at a worse time, obviously, with the unprecedented year that the whole world's had. So how would you sum up Inter Miami's inaugural season, just on and off the pitch?
Just one big chaotic mess. Obviously COVID impacted things, and that wasn't good for the team, and trying to come together, first year squad, trying to learn about each other on and off the field and build chemistry, a new head coach. Like, just COVID definitely impacted things. However, the team also just didn't make a lot of good decisions on the field before COVID hit and after COVID hit, in terms of the players they signed, in terms of how they went about making the team, whether it was the roster or the head coach and maybe his style fitting the roster that was built. I know this might seem a bit complex maybe for people on your side of the pond to understand, because teams are so well established there, and here it's a brand new franchise starting from scratch. They don't have an identity. The roster, especially in Major League Soccer, with all the mechanisms that are in place here to limit spending. So a lot of the roster was built before the head coach was signed. The head coach came in and he was supposed to be this type of head coach, but the guy they ended up getting, Diego Alonso, was maybe not necessarily that type of head coach. So it was just one big mess, man. And it's like a snowball when it starts small and then it keeps rolling and rolling. It gets bigger and bigger. That was pretty much Inter Miami season. They made the playoffs only because MLS expanded the playoff field to 10 teams, which is at least in the Eastern Conference, which was very flattering for the season Inter Miami had, and it still took them until the last game of the season to make it to the playoffs, and then they got knocked out in the first game they played. They lost 3-0, a terrible performance. Just not a good year, not a good year.
Because I would say
some good moments.
I would say, like, from the outside perspective, the word that I would use was disjointed. It's like exactly like you say, obviously, with the COVID rushed the situation, but they were always planning. I know a lot of the new teams, like Austin, have done it this year. A lot of the teams, they say they fill 2 of the 3 DP spots and then leave one open for a summer transfer window, because obviously, players out of contract in Europe, so there's more opportunity and options. But it felt like, obviously, Diego Alonso came on late. He wasn't the first option, obviously. I wouldn't say that Higuain was necessarily a first option, even Blaise Matuidi. So it feels, just disjointed. But like coming into year 2 now, and from my perspective, like I would say the house is a bit more in order now. You've got Beckham over there and really like taking shape with the like onus. He's very hands-on. I've seen videos of him in the training and stuff like that. Obviously, Phil Neville now over there. As an Everton fan, I'm very familiar with Phil Neville. So would you say that that's the biggest difference that you see of covering them day to day? Like everything's like on the same ideology, the same pathway?
Well, it definitely seems like they're more on the same page now, that they have people in positions that where their visions kind of align, or at least align a little bit more than it did maybe a year ago. We'll see how it plays out. We're still in the preseason phase. It's the time of the year when optimism is at its highest. So we'll see once the ball gets rolling and the games start happening and the results start coming, for better or for worse. where things really stand. And, for Inter Miami, yeah, obviously we could talk about the leadership and how those ideas align, but the team itself, there's still a shadow from last year that hangs over this team because Phil Neville and the new sporting director, Chris Henderson, that have been hired, they're inheriting a team that they did not build from last year. And I'm sure whether what they say publicly or not, I'm sure there's pieces on the roster that they don't care for, that don't go with what they want to build or what they want to do, but they have to make do with what they have because that's just the way MLS works. You just can't purge your roster all in one season and start from scratch. So it's going to take some time for them to trim the fat, so to speak. It's going to take them a season or two probably to really get rolling with what they have in terms of their plans. So we'll see how it goes. But right now you can see that there is a renewed energy and, there's a different way of working and going about things, maybe a little more structure than there was a year ago. Now, I don't necessarily pin that on any one person or any one thing. I think that's just a result of having a season to learn some trial and error.
Yeah. Would you say that one of the people like Phil Neville or Henderson has been the most important acquisition of the offseason? Or would you say it's a player that's come in, maybe like Gregore or someone?
I mean, I think Chris Henderson is, maybe in England, he's probably the least sexiest name of the ones I could probably give you because, he's just a front office person. But, I mean, it's a big, notable front office person. He's going to be doing the player scouting and the signing, and he's someone that had a lot of success with the Seattle Sounders as the number 2 guy in that front office over the past 10, 13 years. So him coming to Miami is a very big deal for the team. He was a finalist for the job the first go around before they went with eventual first sporting director, which was Paul McDonough. That did not work out as well as the team would have liked or would have hoped for. That's obviously set them back at least, a season. So Chris Henderson's a notable hire. Phil Neville, I have my questions about him. I know you said you like him. But I have my questions about him. I think there's a lot of question marks about what he can do and whether he can help take this team to the level that they say that they want to be at, because they don't want to just be a playoff team or a competitive team. They want to be a team that's contending for championships. And is Phil Neville the guy that can do that? I'm not so sure. I guess we will see soon enough and over the course of the next few months how good he can be.
Yeah, I think the encouraging thing for Inter Miami would be that getting Chris Henderson is kind of a move that people expected from Miami in terms of going to Seattle, a leading franchise in the league, and going and getting someone that's obviously valued and has lots of good connections, and then being able to, because like you say, over here we don't really have the same structure, obviously, with the regulations that MLS has. So someone with that know-how, especially with then a new head coach who's completely unfamiliar with all the ins and outs of the roster compliance and all that stuff going on, is obviously key. Obviously, the roster compliance at the moment is a big conversation with Inter Miami. So what's going on? What's the latest with the DP situation with obviously Pellegrini? Because I think I heard some rumors about him going maybe to Montreal.
So that did pop up over the weekend. However, not sure how much validity there is to that. Inter Miami has 4 designated players on its roster right now. Now, if you're watching this and you don't know what a designated player is, it's a player of a certain salary in MLS, and you can have 3 of those per MLS rules. This rule was the initial rule that David Beckham brought on board when he signed with the Galaxy however many moons ago. So it's to buy players of a certain caliber of a certain salary. Now they have 4 of those players because one of them is a younger player, Argentine player named Matias Pellegrini, who's not of the caliber of the other 3, and definitely not in terms of recognition or experience. Much younger player, but he still fits under that threshold because of what Inter Miami invested in signing him with the transfer fee. All these other things. The other 3 are Blaise Matuidi, Gonzalo Higuain, Rodolfo Pizarro, a Mexican international. So clearly there's a difference there. And Miami has to shed 1 DP before the start of the season. Now, how they go about that, they can go via trade, they can sell him, loan him. They could theoretically buy down his salary if he agreed to a lesser deal, but probably unlikely. So all eyes are on Matias Pellegrini. They're probably not getting rid of any of the three veterans who are figured to be part of the plans. Pellegrini, maybe not so much. Again, he was someone that was brought in by the previous regime, the previous sporting director. So there was reports recently that they're looking to trade him. And if they're looking to trade him outright instead of loan him, well, then they probably don't really rate him that highly. So you expect that he'll be on the way out. And he just posted something on Instagram like 30, 45 minutes ago on his personal account where, he's overlooking his swank apartment in downtown Miami. And then he takes, a picture of him sitting inside the apartment. And, I don't know, maybe it's him basking in what he's got one last time before he goes. I mean, we don't know exactly how it's going to play out, but it's more than likely that he will not be on the team in the next few days because Inter Miami has to get rid of one of them in some way, shape, or form. However, like you said, there's also an interesting situation going on with Major League Soccer. They're investigating Inter Miami's signing of Blaise Matuidi last year. He was signed as a free agent from Juventus about halfway through the season. He's signed here not as a DP, but as a targeted allocation money player, TAM player. I won't bore you with those details of what that is. It's just another designation that they have, not yet DP, but certain designation for a type of player. He is a DP this year, but in MLS, like never before, has publicly said that they're investigating that signing and making sure it was done in accordance to its rules and regulations. That determination should be made this week, according to MLS Commissioner Don Garber. So we'll see. We'll see how that impacts things and what they say. Because if they say, I doubt MLS, knowing how MLS works, is going to say Blaise Matuidi has to go. He can't be on the roster. I don't think that's going to happen. Yeah. But let's just say, they say something like he's ineligible to play, or again, I doubt that's the case. But if they do say that, then well, all right, now he's no longer an option, and maybe Pellegrini can stay. But everything's kind of in flux ahead of the start of the season. Not ideal circumstances for Inter Miami, but it's what they have to deal with right now.
Yeah, and obviously getting back to the pitch and like the form, like how it's going to look. Obviously, it's been still with COVID a massive situation. Obviously, Inter Miami have probably felt this as much or more than any other team in preparation for the season. I think they've only had like two friendlies, most of them being cancelled. Yeah. So is there any idea about formation with Phil Neville? Because I saw in the inter squad game they played the other day, it was a 4-2-3-1, I think they went with. So I was wondering if it's going to be like a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-3-3, because I was thinking with Gregory coming in kind of gives license to the Pizarro and Matuidi to be a bit more advanced. But what do you think? Is it 4-2-3-1 or a 4-3-3?
Hey, Spanish pronunciations are on point, man. Pizarro, mueve todo fútbol radio. I'm gonna have to get you on because my co-host, Englishman, Steve Brenner, he can't pronounce his R's yet, just like that. We have to talk to Steve about this. I think they started the scrimmage, the inter-squad scrimmage on Sunday, which was the first game that was open to fans and open to media. So it's the first time we got to see them play under Phil Neville. And he had both teams in the scrimmage, which for you guys, I think it's just a practice game, practice match. He had both sides come out in a 4-2-3-1 formation. Now, I saw this during the game. I like to analyze the game, and I noticed this during the game. I took a picture, and I tweeted it out the next day. You can find it on my Twitter handle, at Franco Panizo on Twitter. You can also find it on at MIA Total Football on Instagram. There were times when the team moved out of this 4-2-3 shape and moved into a 4-3-3. Rodolfo Pizarro would drop from the 10 spot, the attacking midfielder spot, and take in deeper positions next to Blaise Matuidi and Gregori. Now, it was just a regular triangle. You can see it clear as crystal in the picture. It's a regular triangle, not an inverted triangle. So it's Pizarro still ahead of Matuidi and Gregori, but with him helping to pick up the ball and circulate the ball and get touches on the ball. I asked Phil Neville about it after the game, and he said, he reiterated what he said 5-6 weeks ago, during one of his first availabilities that he had with us, and that's saying Pizarro's one of their more talented players, one of their more technical players, and they want to get him touches and get him on the ball because that's going to help make an impact on the game. And it's where he's played during the more successful stints in his career, Pizarro is not really a number 10. He wears the number 10, and he played last year predominantly as the number 10 for Inter Miami, but he's not really a 10.
I'd say he's number 8. Yeah.
Exactly. To me, he's an 8. He's an 8. And I think for Miami, you're going to see him play a hybrid 8-10 role because he'll take up those higher positions at times to try to connect with Higuain, Lewis Morgan, and whoever plays on the left side, because that's still a mystery position for them or a troubling position for them. But I also think he's going to drop and get a lot of touches on the ball and try to help create in that type of way. Because when he did drop, and again, you can see this on the picture, Lewis Morgan and Robbie Robinson, who was playing on the left, they went much higher, almost in a horizontal line with Gonzalo Higuain. And it looks clear as crystal as a 4-3-3. Obviously, this was the first game that Inter Miami, like you noted, has opened to the media, and they've had a lot of games canceled, so not really clear on what they've been working on. So maybe Phil Neville went to this being like, well, you know what, I'll have the teams come out in a 4-2-3-1 because I know that's what the public's going to see. But hey, maybe when the game comes against LA Galaxy to start the season, I'm going 4-3-3 because even that's not the formation he starts with, you're going to see that formation from Inter Miami this season. Yeah, 100%.
Because I was thinking, I agree with you. Like having watched Pizarro in Monterrey and like previously before that, even with Mexico, I feel like he's better in that 8 situation, coming deeper, getting the ball, and then hitting it off to other players. Because I see him more as he's not one of those traditional 10s where he's going to get big numbers of assists or goals. I think he's more in the earlier phases of the game. So that's why I was wondering with the 4-3-3. It could look like like the Man City, how they set up with just the 1 DM and then the 2 centre mids. But if they're doing what you say, who do you see as the most important player for this season to go well? Would it be Pizarro?
I think he's a key. I think he's going to be one of the most important players. And I noted this in my season preview for SBI Soccer, that all the designated players, and we're talking about the 3 bigger name veteran presences, Pizarro, Matuidi, Higuain, they all have to step up and raise their performances and do more for Inter Miami this season. However, if you're talking about the most important player, for me, it's Higuain. Not only is he the highest paid player, or reportedly the highest paid player in MLS, but he got just 1 goal last season. It came off of a free kick, a heck of a free kick, a golazo, but that was all he produced in 2020. And I don't necessarily just put it all on him. You see the numbers and you can see, oh, well, he had a terrible season. I mean, he didn't have a good season, but it's not all on him. The function of the team, like you had said, it's a perfectly apt word for it. I used it plenty of times last year. Disjointed. The team didn't play very well. It just looked like a collection of pieces and not necessarily a team that really functioned and worked well off one another. So he has to have a much better year. He has to put the ball into the back of the net. He needs to be clinical, find dangerous positions. They have to get him the ball also. He's not just going to be able to do it all himself, but he absolutely has to have a much better season, 15 plus goals, especially for the salary he's on. You're paying him a lot of money to produce in the final third. So you need to see that production from him this season.
I think this all comes back to, like you say, it's about what's behind him and then leading to, obviously, he's a player that's also likes to drop off and have the space in between the lines, and then he'll let Lewis Morgan, who had a really good season last year. But obviously on the left, like you said, there's a bit of an issue with obviously Pellegrini not being there, or likely not being there, and also behind him with the left back situation, because obviously they've signed Kieran Gibbs, who's coming in from West Brom in the summer. Obviously that's going to be 9 or 10 games into the season, I think about. So what's the left side of the team going to look like, at least at the early point of the season? So
during this pre-game scrimmage, or this preseason scrimmage, they went with Jovan Jones, who they just signed. Last played for the Seattle Sounders, helped them win some MLS Cups. He's a Trinidad and Tobago international. He started at left back. And Robbie Robinson, who they picked with the first selection in the 2020 MLS draft, they had him play the left winger spot. Jovan Jones is probably, you know what you're going to get from him. Solid, if unspectacular. But Robbie Robinson is a second-year pro who was traditionally a striker, center forward, and now they're asking him to play on the wing. I think it better suits his skill set from what I've seen in the limited time that he's played. But he's not necessarily at his best there right now. He's still learning the position, still figuring it out. I still have my questions about the impact he can make in Major League Soccer. So that position was a trouble position for them last year. And I think it's going to sort of still be that again this year because they don't necessarily have a player out there, at least right now from the outside looking in, that can give them the type of play that Lewis Morgan gave them on the right last year in terms of a goal-scoring threat, someone that can whip in crosses, someone that can make an impact in the final third on a consistent basis. Now, when Kieran Gibbs gets here, I imagine, will start at left back, and I imagine that Jovan Jones will slide up into that left midfield spot. Inter Miami was sure to note when they announced Jovan Jones' signing that he can play left back and left midfield. He just did so for Trinidad and Tobago, and he scored a goal. It was against Puerto Rico in a World Cup qualifier, and so not the highest level of opposition, but he can do the job there, and might be a stopgap solution if Robbie Robinson doesn't cut it over the first few games. I imagine they'll give Robbie Robinson some time to see what he can do, but because Phil Neville has been high on him and spoken really well about him, but if he doesn't perform, doesn't show enough, because I don't think he showed enough in this preseason scrimmage, even though he scored off a header. If he doesn't show enough, then they might go Jovan Jones earlier, and they have other options like Breck Shea. They could put Pizarro out there, even though he's not a traditional winger. They have options, but it's not necessarily, they don't have that player.
Yeah, it's not still, it's still a question mark, I'd say. Yeah. But so would you say Robbie Robinson's the young player to watch out for, or would you say it's one of the academy kids that they promoted in the offseason, like Ascona or Valencia?
It's a good question. I would say, Ascona is the one that people are talking about right now. He's 17-year-old Dominican Republic international. He just played for the U23s, but he's played for the senior team before. He's got some good abilities with the ball, and he's got a lot of confidence, and he's a bit fearless. He's a bit smaller, but he's got good technical abilities with the ball and likes to go at defenders. So he's got that going for him. However, are we going to see a lot of him this season? I'm not sure because, on the defensive side of the game, he still needs some work. He still needs to work on his understanding of the game. Physically, there's small players all over the world, but, even small players tend to be a little bit stockier physically. And given that he's still a teenager, he's still developing in that sense. So I don't know how much Inter Miami is going to rely on him this season. I could see him definitely getting some minutes and maybe making good use of those minutes, but I just don't see him getting a lengthy run out just yet. I think, like we saw over the weekend, he'll get more playing time with the USL team in Inter Miami's second team in the USL League, where he started for Fort Lauderdale CF over the weekend in their season opener. So Ascona is probably one to keep an eye on. Robinson's probably likely to get more minutes, but if we're comparing who's more likely to catch the eye, maybe Ascona.
Yeah.
And that's a wrap for this episode of FATP, guys. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe to our socials here on YouTube from across the pond and on Twitter and Instagram. And stay ready for some sabroso content.